Welcome to the Social Chameleon Show, where it's our goal to help you learn, grow, and transform into the person you want to become. Today, I'm talking with Madison Campbell, CEO of Leda Health. Madison is a trailblazer and sexual assault advocate. After going to college to study epidemiology in science populations, Madison has become a well-seasoned entrepreneur. She's been a TEDx speaker and a lead software develop and a lead for a software development company prior to Leda, based in Nigeria. Today, she's working hard to promote the anatomy and self-actualization of sexual assault survivors through Leda Health by developing and providing resources to help them overcome their difficult trauma. Be aware, we do talk a lot about the sexual assault type things, trauma she went through as well. That's really what her company's about, is helping people through sexual assault and trauma. If the one thing I learned really through this episode is, please do find some type of support group, system, therapist, something like that. Please understand this is not your fault. This didn't have to happen to you. And please absolutely go find somebody to help you through the situation. Whether it's her company or not, there's so many things out there. There's a lot of resources. Please do check the show notes for things that we have linked for you there. I really had a great time talking with her. I really learning a lot about this industry and the roadblocks that really come up for them with trying to help people through this. And that's really kind of disheartening to learn about. Lot of great things here. I think this is great for people to, if you've never, been a victim of sexual assault, it's great to know kind of what's going on and, being able to help people around you, maybe be some type of somebody to lean on or somebody to help point people in a great direction. Without further ado, let's talk with Madison. Madison, welcome to the Social Chameleon Show. Thanks for jumping on and reaching out. I look forward to our conversation today.
Well, I look forward to being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So I guess I want to start in maybe a little different place than we maybe anticipated. But so reading through your stuff and whatnot, you studied epidemiology in space populations. Can you talk me through this real quick here?
Yeah. So I was fascinated. I am fascinated by the human being that is Elon Musk. Between you and I and all the listeners out there, I do have a crush on Elon Musk. And he is more than welcome to reach out to you and give him the phone numbers we can exchange. No big deal.
I'll pass it along.
Yeah, pass it along. So, he did a presentation early when I was in college about the first manned mission to Mars. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my God, this is the future, right? I'm kind of a geek. Sci-fi has always been my thing. So being able to see these images of, what things are going to look like and how we're going to get over there, it was so fascinating to me. And my background was in studying public health, right? So nothing related to, aeronautics, nothing related to space or anything like that, or physics. Mm-hmm. But I became so fascinated by what he was doing. And I was more fascinated by the fact he was like, we'll put 100 people in this ship, we'll put them to Mars. And then, they'll go over and my mind started going, okay, well, 100 people, they've never interacted with each other. And you put them in an isolated, vial, right? Like they can't move. They are stuck with each other. What is going to happen? Yeah. And so I became super, super fascinated with doing population-based health or, epidemiology in space population. And it really is like a subject that is unexplored because there's never been more
There's
than
nothing. Yeah.
There's nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's very hypothetical. And so, what I became interested in after talking to some advisors and mentors from NASA is the virus Epstein-Barr, which is most commonly known as mononucleosis. Mm-hmm. So, you go through a quarantine period when you are to go up to space to make sure you have no bacterial diseases or, any other diseases that you could spread or get sick. And they've oftentimes had to bring people down because they, have been sick on the ISS. And so what I became interested in is a virus, right? A virus can go undetected. It can be a dormant virus and it can only be reactivated under certain circumstances. Mononucleosis or Epstein-Barr virus is one of those viruses. So Epstein-Barr virus in commercial space populations, when you add in microgravity, high cortisol levels, aka lots of stress, as well as, galactic cosmic radiation from the sun, then can actually reactivate EBV. And what most people don't know about EBV is not only does it cause mononucleosis and make you really tired for years on end, but it can also be found in cancer. So Burkitt's lymphoma and Epstein-Barr virus was actually the first ever virus found in cancer. And so what's really interesting to me and what I was predicting is if we were to send people on 3-year-long missions to Mars, right? 1.5 years there, 1.5 years back, then my prediction is that they would get have EBV be reactivated and start to cause cancer. And I know that's really morbid and crazy, but that was what I became super interested in.
So, so that's commonly referred to as mono. Is that correct?
Yeah, mono.
And then, from my understanding, once you get it, you always have it in your body.
Yes, and that's exactly why I studied it, right? Because 99.8% of the entire human population already has been exposed to EBV. So it's inside of you, it's inside of me, it's inside of my boyfriend, and you know, all these different people. So it's not something that is bacterial where you can take a drug to fix. We would need a vaccine, and we have not created a vaccine for EBV yet.
Yeah, I got it. And I guess typically people who associate with the kissing disease. I got it talking to somebody. I don't know who it was I was talking to. I was at my Army Reserve training for the weekend, and I don't know how many hundreds of people I talked to. And the next, I don't know, whatever it was, a few days later, I got sick. That was the worst sickness I have ever had in my life. I was literally eating Vicodin like they were candy. I could not get rid of this blistering headache I had. And the doctor didn't test for that. I forget what he initially tested for. And I just chewed through a whole bottle of Vicodin. And I have a high tolerance for pain meds to begin with. So that just, so I went back and then he's like, you know what, this is not, I forgot, I think he thought I had strep, if I remember correctly. It was many years ago. But that was like
easily misdiagnosed you with Lyme disease. A lot of people think that it's Lyme disease, and really it is EBV.
Well, I grew up in Hawaii, so we don't have Lyme, at least.
That is true.
So I think but anyway, that I would not wish that disease on my worst enemy. That was the worst sickness. I don't get sick very often at all, but I mean, just the blistering headache. I can imagine being in a spacesuit on some distant planet with the blistering headache I had. I can't imagine. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And when I came across this, I was like, how do you study epidemiology in space? And what an interesting story. I don't get the Elon Musk fascination. I am not fascinated with him. But I know people that are.
I mean, I think it's interesting for anyone to dream that big, right? I dream in really, I come up with crazy ideas and dream really big.
Yeah.
And I like people that dream really big and have crazy ideas. You know, sometimes the execution, when you go for a crazy idea, it doesn't always work. But the fact that you are able to put that out into the world and start it means that maybe you're not the one who can do it, but somebody else, you know, will be the one that can take it to the finish line.
Yeah, I love that aspect of the things he thinks of, the dreams he dreams, and the things that sound crazy. And a lot of things that we've come accustomed to sounded crazy at some point in time. And like, I mean, with SpaceX and, you know, bringing rockets back was something we never thought we could ever do. The rockets are gone, and that's it. $87 million rockets gone and off into space. We'll never see it again. And bringing those back, that's a huge, you know, feat. So sometimes when I think about things he's doing, I think, you know, whatever billions of dollars you spent on this, I really think we can really work on this planet and not worry about going somewhere else right now. Like, that's how I kind of think about it. But I understand what he's doing. These moon shots, or what they call, and different things like that, really do, spark things like the space revolution we had when we were trying to get to the moon. All the things that came out of that, all the chemicals and the metals we've created, and all these things, we have no idea. The things that are in our daily lives that came out of these NASA projects and all these different things. Yeah, those things are amazing. I definitely get that aspect of it.
And I think that it'll breed a lot of different areas of science that we didn't think about. Like epidemiology is not a thing. If anything, I'm hopefully going to be the one that coins that term. But it will be a thing, because if you put, whether it's the moon or Mars, if you put multiple, amounts of people, it will become a population, which from a public health perspective, you will have to start identifying what happens when there's a large population and everyone's genomes are different. We all act differently, right?
Yeah, and so many things we probably don't even think about, with the lack of sunshine that we're going to be getting out there, being in spacesuits all the time, or in these different types of domes that maybe have to have a certain type of tint on them to keep us from this solar radiation we're not used to, and all these different types of things. And, who knows, scurvy's going to pop up and all these things maybe we never thought of before. Space diseases, I can definitely see those being really big problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I tell people my background. Sometimes, I go through a lot of calls each day, and people will ask me, how I got to where I am. And sometimes I don't mention that because I'm like, they're going to think I'm really weird. Like, I'm like a bit like, I took like all this fascination with sci-fi as a kid and playing all these like simulation games, and then made it a reality. And, but that's part of what, the reason why I'm here today is I come up with crazy big ideas. And when people tell me, hey, they're too crazy, too big, I should go and do them more.
Yeah. Challenge accepted. That's what I like to think. I can't do it. Oh, you want to watch me?
Exactly. I hate that, I have so much spite energy. So I used to say, when I was, in high school, right, that the most productive times for me were when I was broken up with. So, I would have this relationship, I love you, et cetera, young love, right? And when I was broken up with, I would be like, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to work harder, I'm going to be like hotter, I'm going to do this and this, that. And so I used to always say the best way to get me to work harder is just to, pretend to love me, then break my heart. And I'll probably be the next Elon Musk after my next breakup.
Well, I'm going to give you some motivation now. Everything you're doing sucks and you're not going to succeed at all. And that's how it's going to be.
Damn, fuck. Okay, great.
Now get to work.
Yeah, get back to work.
Well, then that kind of brings us back around to this really seemingly massive uphill battle you have taken on. How did you get to this, to the Leda Health? And we're going to get into this different stuff. And it really kind of seems to centralize around sexual assault. How did we get there? I mean, from space, sci-fi, seeming like everything you loved about this world, and you took a whole new path onto something completely else.
Yeah. So Leda Health was created out of, something that became very personal to me that I thought I could ignore. And that was my own sexual assault. So when I was a junior in college, I was studying abroad at University of Edinburgh. I was there for about a month, and I started meeting a bunch of folks, tried to make friends, tried to get together, for studying and things like that. And I was new, right? I didn't grow up in Scotland. I didn't know anyone. So it was difficult for me to make friends in a completely different atmosphere. And so while I was over there, I made friends with a guy who I thought was, great friends with me. And one night he sent me a message at 2 a.m. He had been at a bar and he didn't luck out, right? So he went to a bar, he was drinking a lot, kept trying to hit on women, bring them home, and he ended up failing, right? And so I myself, as this new friend, I said, it's not you. You're an amazing guy. Like, you're awesome. You're so great. Everything you do, it's bad night, right? It's no problem. And so I didn't realize when I did that he also thought, okay, well, that means maybe, like I'm the person who's
right.
And so, so it was 2 a.m. and I was still awake, and, he kind of went silent on the phone, and then I heard a knock at my door. And I was in a dormitory at the time, and, he came in and he forced himself on me. And it was very scary to me because, for a long time, I thought it was my fault, right? So I thought about the fact that I answered his messages at 2 a.m. and the fact that maybe I did lead him on, right? And the fact that maybe I did, think that my behavior was actually why he, sexually assaulted me. And it took me a long time for me to realize that wasn't, the case. It wasn't my fault.
Right.
And so, space epidemiology and this whole path towards academia, while it was really great, and I definitely want to go back there, I was a little bit too early, with a lot of the research that I wanted to conduct. Yeah. And what really came to the forefront of my mind was what happened with my sexual assault. And I started dealing with my trauma in a way where I started to finally realize, because of so many other women speaking up about their sexual assault, that it wasn't my fault. Right. And that this, in fact, happens to a lot of people. And the same exact situation that happened to me, happened to other folks. So, I finally got the courage to speak up, to tell my parents, to tell my significant other, and I was met with so much love, right? And a lot of crying, but a lot of love, right? A lot of crying, but a lot of love. And so I decided to really look into, why don't people report their sexual assault? Why didn't I report my sexual assault? And to be fair, I am pretty much like as privileged as it comes, right? I have a good family that believes in me, that if I would have needed a lawyer, they would have hired one. If I would have needed, to go to the police would have believed me. I am a white woman in America. Like I have a lot of privilege, and I'm decided not to report. And that made me start thinking, okay, if a privileged white girl, couldn't report, holy moly, there is no justice for so many other folks, right? And so I wanted to use that privilege to try to do something good and to try to create a way for folks, to collect forensic evidence within the comfort of their own home, which, can be the difference of, hey, this actually happened to me. I'm not crazy. I have this piece of evidence, to not actually being able to ever get justice. And so we have created the first ever at-home sexual assault evidence collection kit. And that idea has sparked a lot of controversy.
I bet.
Yeah. And I mean, how much have you read? Like, I need to know, like, it's where are you starting at?
I tried to come into this as a novice so I can ask questions and come from, I think, what seemed like I was debating back and forth how much I wanted to kind of get into it. And I thought that if I stayed as a novice I could, I think I would be able to come from the mindset of a lot of people listening. And so that's where I'm at right now. I know of things. I mean, being a 40-something-year-old male in America, I kind of know things that happen. So that's about where I'm at.
Well, it was crazy. So we came up with this idea. Mm-hmm. And what we're basically doing is taking how easy 23andMe is and, being able to allow a sexual assault survivor to capture evidence in their own home. That idea, before it was even a product, out there, for reference, our product has not launched. It's not in the hands of any consumers. We decided to send out an email to college campuses because college campuses are a cesspool of sexual assault, unfortunately.
Yeah.
1 in 4 college students will be sexually assaulted. And in some colleges, it's even 1 in 3. So you basically have like a 7% chance each year of being sexually assaulted if you go to a 4-year institution. So I sent a message to Michigan State University, home to Larry Nassar, home to hiding sexual assault for years and years on end. They got extremely angry that I sent them a letter saying, hey, I think you guys need rape kits. And meanwhile, by the way, at that point, I was donating them the kits as well, right? They sent my letter to the Attorney General of Michigan, who issued me a cease and desist letter the next morning and went into the press with it, calling me names like profiting off of the Me Too movement, profiting off of sexual assault survivors, et cetera, et cetera. He then sent my letter to every single attorney general in the country. And within 1 month, we had 16 cease and desist letters, 5 subpoenas, 16 members of Congress that reached out to us, as well as 2 bills introduced to ban us, all within 1 month of starting the company.
Wow.
In the press, we've been mentioned over 1,000 times in the press. Back in late September, we were headlining with Trump's impeachment, Bernie Sanders, and DIY rape kit. So it was insane. At the peak of it, we were being mentioned 600 to 900 times in television broadcasting and radio every single day.
That's insane. So I have several questions I want to kind of go explore down here. First of all, I mean, what's the problem? Why do people want to stop this? I feels like this is something that should be helping.
Well, there's one big problem, and it's that I'm a for-profit company. So we have gotten a multitude of different, statements saying that, capital is bad, capitalistic tendencies are bad, for-profit bad, profiting off of sexual assault survivors bad, even though I'm a sexual assault survivor. We're a female founded company, we're minority owned, right? My co-founders from Kathmandu, Nepal, she worked in helping sex trafficked victims, get the help they need, right? We're this group of sexual assault survivors, yet
right.
Apparently we are, trying to profit off of the Me Too movement, trying to profit off of sexual assault. The Attorney General for it's either Virginia or North Carolina called me, and I quote, a dirty scammer trying to make a quick buck. I can't wait to get that on a t-shirt one day. It'll be great. But that is definitely one of the biggest things. And then there's two others. So one is, and they don't think it will be admissible in court. However, during COVID, sexual assault survivors in certain jurisdictions were turned away from hospitals, which means that we've actually had at-home kits used. And we've had the district attorney, police, and sexual assault nurse examiners all work together on something called the Monterey Protocol. And those sexual assault survivors were able to test within the comfort of their own home. It took 15 minutes versus a 4 to 8 hour long time frame. And those sexual assault survivors were able to get help in the time of COVID where they would have been turned away. And the district attorney in those jurisdictions went on record to say that there was no chain of custody or admissibility problems, which is great.
Yeah.
That was something that people were very, very concerned about early on when we started the company, which is a valid fear.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to my head.
Yep, it is a totally valid fear. Although, even if we wouldn't have set court precedent during COVID, we have found, hundreds of cases where self-collected evidence has been admissible. Okay. Whether it's a bed sheet or a handkerchief or, semen in a dress. Right. Or a dress. Right. And I said that all the time. Right. I'm like, you want to know about something that brought down someone? It's the Monica Lewinsky dress. Right.
Yeah. And that was 7 or 8 years old at the time or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, self-collected evidence isn't new. Is someone creating a privatized company to do this new? Yes. Right.
Right.
And we frankly make them look bad. Right. The average time it takes for the government to test these kits is 2 years. We can test it in 2 weeks. Right.
Yeah. I've heard the backlog is massive.
200,000 kits currently in the backlog.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these cases will probably never even see the light of day.
No. I mean, speak about the home state of Michigan. They lost 11,000 kits in a Detroit warehouse that, they found randomly one day, 11,000 kits, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, we make them look bad.
Yeah.
We make them look bad because we are going to do it better, faster, more efficient, and cheaper than they ever could. And we don't sell to survivors. We sell to institutions. So we go to a university and we say to the university, hey, you guys need this. It needs to be something that you can protect your students with. Let's bring it and let's give it out to the student body, right? So the students, aka the survivors, are not the ones paying the cost. We are putting the burden on the cost on the system itself.
Just like if they were to be offering free contraceptives or something like that along the lines, right? So So now that I'm thinking about it, so let's say you've got a bunch of bags of them sitting at a service counter or whatever at your dorm, down at the desk or whatever, and a girl can walk downstairs in the morning, grab one, go up to her room, and then kind of secretively, and feeling a sense of maybe comfort doing the things, going through the checklist and compiling all the evidence she has, and then really that sounds like a nice, safe environment this person could be in, because like you're saying earlier. Maybe you don't even want to maybe admit that this happened. Maybe you don't want to believe it being, or maybe this is my fault. But you could, discreetly go downstairs and just grab something, or walk somewhere, whatever it be, have a friend pick something up for you. That, when you kind of break it down in that way, that's a really interesting idea. And it's probably, as you guys fight this battle, it sounds like you could really probably help a lot more people that never would have received help.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to replace the hospital. We can never replace the hospital. Right. What we're trying to create is a solution for the 70 to 90% of people that don't go to the hospital, who right now have no other option. I really hate the world in which we live in, which says that we have to do it in, a black and white way, right? Yeah. You either do it this way or you don't do anything at all. I mean, the question I have for state attorney generals is, okay, if people don't want to go to the hospital or go to the police and get one of these kits done, what do you want them to do? Throw away their evidence, throw away the clothes that they were wearing, throw away the bed sheet? Because that is what you're telling them to do right now without an option.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's, it kind of seems like for your folks' company, this COVID thing, maybe it was a blessing where you guys can start to have this proof of concept in these situations where you don't want to be at a hospital. You don't want to be at a clinic. You don't want to be at urgent care right now, maybe because you're scared or maybe because the facilities are full. What have you guys seen in that, other than you've talked about this, really help you guys advance this cause? Or not only that, maybe even found problems or solutions that you guys never even thought of that you guys have been able to kind of address?
COVID has been amazing. It's just great. You know why COVID has been amazing? We've realized that the government does a really bad job at testing, right? Whether it's COVID testing or sexual assault testing, we do a really bad job.
Yes.
And, Trump went out early on in talking about COVID and was like, we're just going to stop testing, right? We'll just stop testing and then the cases will go down. Yeah, if you stop testing, cases will go down. That's how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, in the government, I believe now is thinking about it the same way. If we just don't test the rape kits, then there's not, there's not rape going on, right?
Right.
So there has been a culture shift in America, which has been helpful because people are finally waking up to the fact that there are huge inefficiencies and that you look at like Bill and Melinda Gates, who put all this money into, probably going to be creating the vaccine, right, for COVID, and all these other privatized companies that are coming in to help test and create services. When the government does not have the resources, privatized companies come in to fill the gap, right? And so the culture shift in America is, in my way, helping us because we've been able to fill that gap, right? We are filling the gap with a much needed resource that the government cannot currently provide. I also think that it has been really helpful context setting, since, the riots happened, right? So people finally woke up to, and when I talk people, I'm talking like investors, right? Like the stakeholders, people finally waking up to there are mass injustices, in the police system. There are a lot of sexual assaults that happen amongst police members or police members to those incarcerated, as well as in the prison system, right? There are these power dynamics which we need to look at and we really need to shift in order to make real change in America.
Well, I'm glad that this has been something that's really helped you folks along. I really see, the potential of something like this really helping a lot of people. I know, and I know it's not the thing, but I hear a lot that so many cases go unreported. So many people don't want to go to the hospital or whatever to get tested. What are things that you guys are teaching people to kind of maybe get away from the stigma or maybe the story of blaming themselves and along these lines? How did you maybe even recover from that? And what are you guys teaching?
Yeah, I mean, the words that we use are very important. So, the words that we try to utilize in all of our, messaging and branding and educational materials is stop using the word victim, right? You're not a victim of anything. You're a survivor, right? We don't really say you're a victim of cancer. We say you're, a survivor of cancer, right? Or you're thriving, right? And I think this idea of victimization is really dangerous. Saying, I'm so sorry about what happened to you. It's going to be okay. Rather than saying, you know what happened to you does not have to define who you are or your narrative. In fact, it doesn't even have to be one chapter of your life. It could be one paragraph or one sentence. Right. And what we're trying to teach folks is, the most traumatic thing that could have possibly happened to you does not have to define who you are as a person. It does not have to define your relationships. It does not have to define your career path. It defined mine, right?
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't get justice, so I'm putting my life back into helping other people get justice. But the words that we're trying to use and the branding and the messaging that we're trying to say is, how do we get people on that healing journey to realizing that they're not a victim, they're a survivor, right? And in fact, they're thriving because of what happened, right? Finding a silver lining in something that is, really, really bleak, to be honest.
What are the the techniques or the therapies or the steps or whatever it is that you guys are using, maybe a couple of things you can share with the listeners out there. Maybe there's somebody that's struggling with this that can start them either, Googling the right things or going to see the right type of person, if you kind of get what I'm going after with that.
I completely understand. So we've started support groups during COVID, where anyone listening, if you are a survivor of sexual assault, our support groups are completely free, and happy to share that. But
I can link that in the show notes for everybody.
Amazing. Yeah. So during our support groups, they're 8 weeks long, and we do 4-hour sessions each week. So 2 hours on Sunday, 2 hours on Monday. And what we found to be really amazing is actually using a combination of music, dance, movement, even sound therapy, and sex positive therapy. So we kind of do a mixed bag approach where we bring in therapists who are really talented in a bunch of different areas of therapy that don't even necessarily make you talk about your assault, right? It's not, in part of healing, you don't have to heal immediately by talking about it, right? And I think that's what a lot of survivors don't know, or folks that have been afflicted by this or anything else. Finding healing and coping mechanisms can happen before you even start talking about what happened to you, whether it's PTSD or sexual assault or something else. And so taking a sound bath, if you're familiar with like what sound baths are,
sure, yeah.
Different.
If you want to maybe just quickly run through that so people that don't know.
Yeah, so it's, a way of using different sounds to really help you meditate, help you, really kind of center yourself in thinking about the world that you're living in right now. And I find it to be really helpful. A lot of the sexual assault survivors find it to be very helpful in trying to bring you back to the present, right? Bring you back to right now, keep you online so you can continue to make it through every single day, right? We find movement and dance therapy is super important during COVID too. I sit in my desk all day. I go from like desk to bed to like sometimes standing, but not really. And that's a huge problem. And that also creates a lot of depression. So during this time of COVID or any time, being able to work your trauma out through dancing and movement and actually physically, getting out of your body a little bit, we find is really, really helpful.
What about psychedelics, MDMA, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and these types of things? Have you guys experimented with those types of things? I know they're really helpful with PTSD. I assume this is something similar to PTSD, if not right in the same realm.
It's definitely PTSD. So we have not done any psilocybins, but I have.
Okay.
I have for sure. So I have done both MDMA, mushrooms, and acid. I have not done ayahuasca, and I know that there's a bunch of other plant-based therapies.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends on the person, right? So I am a very anxious person, right? Like when I smoke pot, I somehow think that there's police at my doors. Like if I hear a siren. Yeah. Like I'll be like, they're coming to arrest me with my like 1 gram of pot. Like, oh my God, they're going to get my joint, that's where my mind goes. And so whenever I've done mushrooms and acid in the past, my mind has gone like to this very weird anxiety place.
Okay.
This is my one acid story. Because I didn't really take it after I had this experience. So I went to Burning Man. Nice. And as soon as I got onto the playa, I was given acid, and I, didn't really have much food or much water in me at that point. Like had been traveling all day to the middle of the, Black Rock City. Yeah. Have you ever been to Burning Man?
No, I'm really reevaluating going. I shunned it for a while. I was like, I'm not into this. And the more I've learned about this stuff, the more I kind of need to go.
You should go. It's great. Yeah. So I started thinking everything was a simulation. So I went straight into simulation theory. So, the Stephen King novel Under the Dome?
No.
Okay, so Stephen King writes this like, horror, kind of book, right. Under the Dome. And basically it's like, you're living in this big dome and you can see like the crystals and you're stuck and you can't get out of the dome, right? Okay. And so I was walking around the desert, and it kind of is in a dome, like the way that it's positioned. And so I'm walking into the middle of this, and I look up and I swear that I can see like the crystals, and I'm like, we're in a simulation. Everybody is a simulation. This is the Matrix. Yeah. That is where my mind went. So God bless, folks that can use it in a positive way to really heal. Yeah. But I would probably spend like hours and hours being like, tell me this isn't the Matrix. Where's the red pill, the blue pill? I want to take it. I want to figure it out. Yeah. However, MDMA has been net positive for me. So every single time that I've taken MDMA, I've figured out more things about myself. Mm-hmm. I figured out, what, not the meaning of life. That's a really big thing to figure out. But I figured out, who I loved, which was a big thing, right? And in figuring out who you love, you also figure out who you should spend time with, the good people, the bad people. And it has helped me make a lot of very big decisions on people, which, end up allowing you to make bigger decisions in the world, because the people you surround yourself with are the people that can help you get further in life, right? And can help you out, right? I would take MDMA and call my parents and be like, I love you. You've helped so much. Thank you for supporting me, or my friends, and things like that. So I really want to see, in terms of pharmaceuticals, us figuring out a way to do MDMA or MDA, which apparently is a version of MDMA without as much side effects. Yeah. Because I think being able to put yourself in a very positive, like net positive mind frame is going to help a lot of people actually to realize, it isn't your fault, and that you love yourself and you love the people around you, and that you can be that happy, if you kind of put that mindset forward.
Yeah, no, I've heard, I'm very interested in these psychedelic drugs or therapies, whatever you want to call them. There's so much research and stuff I've heard about and read about, especially in this PTSD type realm, the miraculous kind of recoveries and things people have been able to make. And if there's any avenue of PTSD that is something that can really help people, I think sexual assault is one of those. Especially, yeah. It seems like through listening to your story and a lot of other stories, this victim/survivor blaming that happens a lot. And I think being able to disassociate yourself with that and being able to look at that and say, this is not my fault and all those things. I think these drugs have a lot of promises, a lot of good research finally coming out now. There's so many different people behind these projects and things. I think there's a lot of good that's going to come from this. I think if you're interested, I would spend some time looking at this. Tim Ferriss, if you guys aren't familiar with him, he's been doing a lot of research in this area, as long as some other people into this different thing. I think John Hopkins, has a new institution now they just created for the psychedelic research, MAPS, the organization. They've got a lot of great resources. Well, if you're struggling with this, I think it's something that could help.
I think so. What I've heard about it, and what I do think is a really good thing, is it opens you up to actually being able to talk about the trauma.
Right.
So it almost unleashes things that you forgot about. So even in my moment, and I talk about how it does give me some anxiety, but that is really positive if you are able to work through it, right?
And I think the thing, you need somebody there to help you work through this. This is from how I understand it. Like taking it on your own with some friends, there's one side of that, but taking it in a setting with a therapist that says, okay, you're anxious. Let's talk through this. Let's walk through this. Explore that, dig down into that. I think that's really where the power lies.
I think so too, because every time I was with friends, they were all having such an amazing time and they're doing this. And I went into my trauma, honestly. Yeah. Right. And I didn't really have a shaman, right, to show me the way, or a psychologist to lead me out of that anxious hole.
Yeah. Like I said, that seems like the key there is having somebody that knows what they're doing and talking about is really where the therapeutic benefits definitely come from. And please go seek a professional if you're interested in this. Don't be out exploring. I've heard a lot of bad things about people. If you don't know, this can really unleash a lot of mental health problems if you have. So please do this responsibly. People out there listening and watching.
Yeah, and always test. You can buy a drug test kit on Amazon. You should always know what is inside anything, whether it, is somebody you trust or somebody new. You should be able to test it, understand what you're ingesting, and that is super important. I mean, there are so many times where, folks will lace, cocaine and things like that. And a lot of these drugs, especially MDMA, is often laced with cocaine, and that is horrible.
Yeah, anything to stretch it and make a little bit extra money. Yeah, that's unfortunately part of getting these things on the streets. So yeah, it's definitely tough.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to circle back to your journey, maybe as a way of helping people through their journey. How did you stop blaming yourself and really start to say, to set yourself off in a different direction? What was the tool or resources? What did you use or what did you do to jump out of that mindset and get away from that story?
Yeah, I have to think. So it really all started with my last relationship. So my last relationship that I was in, and I was in that relationship whenever I was sexually assaulted. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that great of a relationship. There was a lot of psychological, maneuvers to hurt each other. I think on both my end and his end. Right. And, during that time, I didn't feel like I was in a comfortable space. Right. I felt like if I told him, right, this is why it took me so long to tell him, that he would have thought I cheated on him. And that I was, I left him for someone else while I was studying abroad. That was not the case. Right. At all. And, when I finally started realizing that it was a bad relationship, I had a lot of friends tell me that it was a bad relationship and help me get out of the relationship. And, during that time, he was so nice to my friends and my family, right? So, he would act in a very certain way to me, and then in front of friends and family be a very different human being. And so I started to feel like I maybe was the crazy one, actually, right? Like, oh, I'm just, this is not my fault. It's his fault. This is something that if no one else is seeing, it must not be happening. And so a way that it was kind of like my trauma repeating itself, right? Oh, it's my fault, right? This is, I'm the one creating the damage. And so what I started doing was I started collecting evidence, right? And this kind of goes into like why I, did evidence collection too, but I would start recording him yelling at me, like our confrontations and things like that, where I would,
like a voice memo or something like that, or
voice memo. Because it just got to that point, right? And I would send them to friends and family and they would be astounded by what they heard, just completely astounded. And I would take screenshots of text messages and I would send them off, that were incredibly rude. I mean, I still have them favorited in my phone because, sometimes I like to look back and realize how far I've come and why, I've been able to get out of a bad situation. I mean, I think this is important for our listeners to know that this is, so when I finally ended things with him, he wrote me a text message that said, "This is your future. You will bang a bunch of dudes in New York City because you were and always will be a prostitute. Then when Poppy passes," which is my grandfather, and he did pass away, and will never be there for him until he dies, "you'll get some stupid ass tattoo, like a flower to commemorate your relationship that you used him for, and you will fall apart. You'll proceed to do some whack shit like lesbian porn, and then become a prostitute. Or you will bang people for their money and connections and never accomplish anything yourself. You abandoned me and I want nothing to do with you." Which at that point I'm like, I'm good, I abandoned you. But that it was a lot of things like that over and over again. And I sent them to my friends and my family. I mean, one night I got in my car and I drove to New York City alone because I shut off my phone. And, this is something I don't tell often, but I wasn't actually the one to tell my mother about my sexual assault. So when I was ending my relationship with my former significant other, as a way to get me to stay with him, he called my mother to let her know about my sexual assault. So I had told him like a week or so, once things were ending and I finally felt like I was getting the courage to leave him, to go. I had all this evidence, right, in case he were to do something crazy. And, as I was leaving, he told my mother about my sexual assault, which was really hard. But that was kind of what I needed in a way, to start talking about it and to start opening up the conversation. But it took so much. If I did not have the support that I have now, I don't think that I could have done what I did. I don't know. I probably would be married to him, and just would have dealt with it, and wouldn't have said anything else. But, it was that evidence collection. It was sending it to a third party. So I could feel like I was not the crazy one, that there was, evidence out there that I'm, the one that's just sitting here and receiving all this pain, that allowed me to move forward with my life and allowed me to get a lot of healing. And so that's why I think evidence collection is so important. It allows you to not feel like it's your fault, because you have evidence that it's not your fault. And you might not believe that it's not your fault. But if you're able to revisit it or have somebody else look at it, they're going to see it and they're going to say, Madison, that is not yours, right? Like that you did not deserve that. And so that, even though I never went through a court system and I never did anything and I never planned to do anything, for the things that happened in that relationship, I know what happened and I have proof of it. And it makes me feel like, that part of my story is closed. And I've been able to get closure, and I finally have reconciled that it is not my fault for what happened.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that would help for some people, not to justify this person's behavior, but it also sounds like that person's got a lot of baggage and hate and things that probably have happened to them. Is that true?
Yeah, he was cheated on, before his relationship with me. And so he had a lot of trust problems. And so, and I think he had a lot of PTSD as well. I mean, he served in the military, and had, a lot of PTSD from deployments. And I just hope that he's okay today. Right. I wish nothing but the best for him. Honestly, like it was a lot of harm for both of us. I think that there was a lot of emotions on both ends. But, at the end of the day, I have moved on with my life. I have, created a new chapter. I've gotten stronger and better. And, I hope that he was able to deal with a lot of his PTSD and trust issues as well.
So for the people that don't have the support system you had to help you through this, what should they be doing out there? The ones that are in this early stages like you were, and doesn't have the friends or family behind them or to support them or to believe them even sometimes. What should they be doing? How can they start this journey? I mean,
I think, the best thing to do is to start, like me, start recording things, right? Okay. So every phone has voice memos on it. Every text message that gets sent, take a screenshot of it. If something is crazy that gets sent, be able to keep that. You can put it in a Google Drive that no one else can, reach, as well as, put those recordings or give them, if you don't have anyone else to give them to, put them in a Google Drive, put a password behind it, make sure nobody else can access it, but start collecting evidence. I think that is the most important thing, because even if you don't have a support network now, once you're able to get that support network, whether that's police or, a lawyer or something like that, they're going to want to see the history of what happened. And I also think that getting, evidence and collecting it is good in terms of if you are able to see a therapist or go to a support group, like we offer or you can find wherever, because that therapist will be able to help you walk through actually even being able to listen to those recordings. Like it took me a while to even be able to listen to the recordings that I did, to just realize that it wasn't my fault, but that was all part of the healing journey. And so if you start with something as simple as just collecting recordings, or collecting text messages that make you really upset, you can take those, hold on to those until you're able to find a support network to really start digging in deep about how it isn't your fault, right? And a support network is so important. And there's so many online communities. You know, my door is always open, of course. I'm sure your door is open as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, you know, there are people out there that want to help, and we are here to help. And, you know, the way that we built Leda was, you know, the story behind Leda is Leda was a sexual assault survivor who was sexually assaulted by Zeus. And so, you know, the reason why we named the company Leda is because sometimes you can't tell anyone, but you can tell Leda, right? And Leda doesn't stand for, you know, this company. It stands for me. It stands for you. You are Leda. I am Leda. You know, everyone who is a support person is Leda.
That's awesome. I like that. That's a interesting way to think about it and frame that. Speaking of that, I noticed you guys kind of have, you know, pulled things back a little bit and shut down a little bit. What are you guys doing? What triggered this? And what are you guys doing to kind of revamp things?
Yeah, so we've been kind of in stealth mode a little bit. We're slowly going back into the market. We haven't officially launched yet, but during this time, we're really focusing on product development. So we've rebranded to be gender neutral, which we think is super important. Our old colors were kind of pinks, and, you know, this sexual assault is not a gendered problem. You know, this is something that across all gender identities. And that's why we wanted to look at colors like green and, you know, and beige and cream and teal, like these very calming colors. So we've spent a lot of time on branding, a lot of time on messaging, and a lot of time building out our team, you know, talking to thousands of different survivors. We built our team from a 2-person team of me and Liesl to over 60 folks, right? Which is incredible and amazing. And, you know, of those 60 folks, we represent a lot of different universities. You know, all of our team is under the age of 25. We're young. We know what's going on. We started TikToking, you know, like, but what we're really spending during this time is understanding how big of a problem this is and understanding how we can build, you know, a solution at every step of the problem. So, you know, with being isolated and alone and not having a support network, like you said, we're building support groups. You know, with folks that might have gotten pregnant, you know, we're looking at how we can give emergency contraceptive out. For those who've been exposed to STDs, we're looking at how to do STD testing. You know, we really want to be the person that you trust for everything after the most traumatic time of your life. And so we've stepped back, you know, we haven't said a lot, but we're working on how do we become this much bigger brand and much bigger company.
So it seems like you guys are kind of that kind of holistic, vertical, integrated approach of kind of anything to do with this type of space. You guys are really trying to hammer all those details down and really be that one-stop shop for people, you know, kind of dealing with these situations.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we just want to really talk to survivors. We want to make sure that what we're doing rings true with them and that they do want the solution. And it is something that will make them feel empowered. And, you know, from our initial understanding, we think that this is still the right way. And I've said early on, if we figured out that this was not the right solution to fixing sexual assault, we would pivot. Right. But we've talked to a multitude of different people, you know, during COVID, before COVID, that chose not to go to the hospital and have no other choice and want a different choice. And even now, definitely do not trust the police. And we want to provide those folks with a different option, and we think that we'll be able to provide it very shortly.
Yeah, and I think, like we talked about earlier, I think COVID has really kind of opened the doors up for you guys and what you guys are doing. What is the mentality, the self-talk like with all these legal problems, the, you know, fighting the system? What is it like in your guys' organization to really stay positive, stay on mission, and really keep that upbeat and know, you know, what you guys are fighting for? How are you guys dealing with that? What are you guys doing? What's that self-talk like and all those types of things? Yeah,
I've been doing a lot of meditation. Mm-hmm. And I try to do yoga, but I'm not that good at it. And I'm not, but you know, there's 2 things in the world that actually make me super happy. One is going thrift shopping and repurposing clothes. So like no clothes in my wardrobe are like fast fashion or anything like that. I go to Goodwill's and out here in Palm Springs, I go to Angel View and I repurpose clothes. I cut them up, I sew them, I do crazy things with them. and being able to kind of like create sustainable fashion is something that makes me really happy and keeps me, calm and collected. I recommend anyone, to try to repurpose clothes at one point. It's really cool, really fun.
Yeah.
And then I do just enjoy watching movies. Like, being able to escape to a different world, even if it's an hour or two, has been super helpful in, COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And just my healing journey in general. I remember right after my assault is when Westworld first came out, like season 1 of Westworld. Mm-hmm. And I would just watch Westworld over and over again because I wanted to put myself in a different world, right? Like literally Westworld, right?
Yeah.
And there is something that is really, amazing about going to a different world for a couple hours and then being able to say, okay, I visited there and now I'm back here. Right. And immediately after this call, I'm going to go watch more Netflix. Like, that is my way of being calm.
Does that, maybe dip into the realm of like some type of avoidance or, I'm avoiding my problems. If I sleep, nobody can get to me. Does that creep in, or is there something to be wary of?
I think there is some avoidance, right? I mean, but I don't think that a little bit of avoidance is a bad thing. I mean, sometimes you're just not in a place you have to take that business call. You have to do that interview. And it is sometimes, I mean, maybe psychologists might differ, in opinion, but I think it is okay to put something on standby. I don't think it's okay to ignore it forever, but to say, hold on, hold on, wait, this is my trauma. I'm going to, put it under the bed, until Friday, and then Friday night, I'm going to revisit it. Right. And I think that there's something about a little bit of an avoidance that can be a good coping mechanism. Right. Not everyone is ready to speak about their assault or their trauma or what's going on in their work week or, an employee, battle that's happening or politics or whatever. And so sometimes just putting that on hold is okay. And you don't have to feel ashamed for putting it on hold.
Yeah, and I see that. I definitely, I'm Captain Procrastination. I like to, take my time and think about things. I just kind of worry, and I've seen it happen with friends and other people and stuff like that. You Friday keeps coming, and next Friday, and then next Friday, next Friday. And I worry that, you just don't deal with their stuff. And if I avoid it long enough, if I hide from the repo man long enough, they're not going to take my car, that type of thing. Yeah. And maybe, is there a technique or some type of strategy or something that maybe you use to make sure that Friday doesn't keep coming and going?
Yeah. I mean, so I recently started doing this technique, which has been super helpful. So I like writing physical notes down. I always have a notepad next to me. And during my week, I do 2 columns. I do good and bad. Okay. And in my good column and my bad column, I will just put tallies of when a generally good thing will happen and when a generally bad thing will happen. And when I start realizing that the tallies for bad things happening are much more than the tallies for good things, I know that it's time for me to take a stop and take a look at my life and what is happening and really start evaluating and looking at those bad things and why are they happening? And is it because I'm ignoring my trauma or because I'm ignoring something bigger? Right. And that has been super helpful. I mean, it takes a couple seconds. And if you know that, in a week, I have 20 tallies for good and 2 for bad, maybe it's not this week to look at, kind of these underarching like structures, right? That might be a problem. But if in your week you have 50 bad things that are happening, is that because of something bigger that you're ignoring? Yeah. And I think being able to visualize it and see the difference between good and bad things is super important. It helps you visualize kind of where your life is in any given time in any given week and allows you to focus your priorities, right?
Do you ever find yourself maybe like, I guess, catastrophizing a bit and everything's bad and there's nothing that's good happening and, God, look, I got 100 tallies and see my life just sucks and there's nothing but bad stuff. Does something like that creep in this type of system or in your experience with things like this? Yeah.
I mean, every 1 week out of every month, thanks to, and Flo. But, yeah, I mean, hormonal or not hormonal, there are times where my boyfriend likes to call it a doom loop.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, it's like everything, you're doomed, everything's going to fail. It's so bad. And during that time is when I came up with the idea for good and bad, because when you do realize that, you have to actually write down every instance, like in my good and bad tally, literally being on this podcast would be a tally for good, right?
Thank you.
Like, yeah, of course, right? So like, oh, I have to send an email, right? Or I got an email from a client who said they're not interested, right? Bad. But then, being able to do that with every single instance kind of made me realize you can get out of that doom loop, right? And maybe it just takes you putting more energy into getting some good things to happen, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that is, going and meditating. That's something good. Going and doing yoga. That's something good. Going and exercising, going and doing this, going and cooking a meal, those are all good things that you can add to your tally. And so when you're in a doom loop, that doom loop is having those 50 negative bad things that you can't get rid of and nothing on the good side. But being able to change the perception and say, I can put more, motivation into building more good things into my life. And you can always build more good things into your life. It's really easy to, get off the podcast, go exercise, go take a run. Like that is a good thing that you can add to your tally.
Yeah, I know. If we really stop to think about all the good things that really happened, I mean, you woke up this morning, check. Your power turned on, your water turned on, your toilet flushed. A lot of countries in this world don't have any of those luxuries. And if really just kind of, I think if you're struggling with some of these, looking for good things, start with those simple, basic things. Hey, the sun rose this morning. Check. The lights. Turn on. The refrigerator still working. All these things really kind of, I think, can build into that. Have you ever looked at some of these things that you categorize and you've labeled as negative and say, you know what? Maybe that customer that didn't want this. This is a good thing. I can reshift my message. I can maybe look at this in a different way and taking what you initially categorized as negative and saying, where's the positiveness? Do you do that? Do you have techniques for that?
I definitely do that. I mean, I think there's been the biggest rejections in my life have been now, years later, some of the best rejections of my life. So, I talk about my mom finding out about my sexual assault through my significant other. That for 2 years was a bad mark, right? It was, this is horrible. This is bad. And now to me, it is a good mark, right? It is something that is very good. And so, I've been rejected by investors where in that moment, I'm like, this is horrible. This is bad. They didn't like me. Being rejected, whether it's relationship or investors or clients or anything like that, or for a job, it feels awful.
Yeah.
But then realizing once you get another investor or another client or another job or another relationship, that the fact that you got rejected led you to that opportunity, right? I do think everything happens for a reason. Maybe I like to think about that because it makes the bad not seem as bad, right? And that's been super helpful, is realizing that every single moment that happens in my life builds upon creating something greater. So even the worst rejections where I've literally got into a shower and I've cried, like ugly cry, hyperventilating cry, ended up being the times in my life that I look back on as the turning point for actually doing something amazing.
I like that. Is there habits or routines that you jump into or you've been gravitating to help you with your daily life, with trauma, with helping people with their trauma? Are there things that people can kind of implement or start up?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I've started implementing recently during COVID is having a time where I stop working, right?
Yeah.
I think that is a super easy thing to implement for a day, like when you just turn off your phone and you don't take any text messages and you are not going to work. I think COVID has, the reason why a lot of us are feeling a lot of depression right now is because there is no ending.
Right.
It is only beginning and only ending, right? So, at 5 p.m. of my day, every single day, I stop, right? I just stop working. I don't answer text messages. I give myself a break. I am sometimes tempted. Most of the time right now, I've been very tempted. Yeah. And on weekends, I give myself completely off. If I am talking to somebody on a weekend, there's a crisis going on, basically, right? Yeah. There's something that needs my immediate attention, and being able to call it quits and having boundaries is so important. And it took me so long to create any boundaries. I used to think my co-founder was absolutely crazy for not talking to me on the weekends. I was like, why are you not talking to me? There's so much work we could do. And then realizing that she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant in taking weekends, and that I should too. And so, the American culture of work until you die is not sustainable for our mental health. And that's something that I agree with you, that has really come to light during COVID. It's so easy, especially now, a lot of people are working from home, to be like, oh, you know what? I'll answer one more email. Let me check my phone one more time. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are realizing that that's just not, this is a bad recipe. It's really a recipe for disaster. And it's like, there's some staggering, statistics out there. So the average email gets answered in 4 seconds. That is mind blowing. Like, I don't know who's in their inbox that much, but that's the average. So and what's happening is these people are getting pings and dings and things flashing on your computers and on your phones all day long. Personally, I think it's 6 or 7. My phone shuts off. It automatically shuts stuff off. You can't text me. I don't get no messages. I don't have any notifications on my phone at all, except for text messages and phone calls. But I don't even, and next morning my phone comes back on after 7 a.m., all these things start popping up on my phone again. I all night long, I missed and I didn't see. And I tell you guys right now, nobody died. I'm not a doctor, so I don't have to worry about none of that stuff. Yeah.
So, just really separating yourself, giving yourself a stop time, and shutting down the email and shutting down the computer, and really spend some time with your family or with yourself, or like you're saying, get outside. I mean, getting outside is a big thing that we're just not doing anymore. And getting out there and getting fresh air and getting sunshine. Those are absolutely critical to your health and your mental health and a lot of things like that. That's definitely something I think really people need to, kind of reevaluate and get on that.
And I think a lot of people are. Like, I'm seeing friends of mine finally go and take walks, like do this and do that. And it's great. But, it is sad that we had to have COVID to teach us all like important lessons about our own mental health. Right.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that come from, not just that mental health, the sleep. I've noticed that the environment, we really have kind of seen like, wow, we really were jacking things up. And just in a few weeks, how things have come back so quickly. There's a lot of good that really has come from this, I think.
How's your sleeping been? I mean, I find myself going to bed earlier and waking up earlier and being super productive.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. We, especially in America, we kind of take for granted. We think that, this 4 to 6 hour sleep badge of honor, and I'm just killing it. I've never been in that camp. Well, I shouldn't say never. When I was younger, I a little bit, but I had a hard time with it because I really just function well on about 8 hours of sleep. And as I've gotten older and I've learned more about sleep, I protect my sleep like there's nobody's business. I don't care what I'm doing, where I'm at. I'm really out of here. I got to go. And there's, I've done an episode on sleep. If you guys are interested, check it out. Also, Dr. Peter Attia, he has his podcast, A Drive. He does a 3-parter with Matt Walker. He's like the leading sleep expert in the world. Great information. There's a lot to it. We actually do better work when we're well rested, when we're not pulling these all-nighters, when we're not, getting 6 hours of sleep. And, when you're getting these, 4 to 6 hours of sleep, you're technically drunk. You're just going around drunk all day, and nobody would ever show up to work drunk. But it's okay if we sleep a little less and our brain is technically in that state of that buzzed drunk kind of feeling. You really get a lot more done. You think more clearly. You're not going back and forth between tasks. You're not in this constant brain fog. You're not trying to do all these things. You really get a lot more work done. The one thing with COVID I really doubled down on was exercise. That was the one thing in my life that always I was like, you know what, I can do it later on this afternoon. I'll do it this evening. And I really just wouldn't get it done. That's something I really doubled down on. I said, no, there's just not any room to be unhealthy, especially with things like this kind of really popping up. And, being overweight and being unexercised is really not just with COVID, but a lot of, diseases and things really just put you at a disadvantage.
Oh, I have seen crazy weight loss stories during COVID. So a good friend of mine, Rob, I had seen him right before COVID, and I saw him recently once, very socially distant hangout. I was astounded. He looked like a completely different person.
Wow.
I mean, he must have lost like at least, 75 pounds during COVID.
Wow.
Just a completely different human being. And it has been so great. Like a lot of people try and keto diet too.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of like meat. I'm like a carb person. I am like, I can never go on a diet. Like I am so carbs and cheese and pasta and rice and everything, right?
Some people that works for. It's really about your body type and your genes and so many things that go into that.
I'm just gonna ride it out as long as I can. Like I'm 24 right now and I never gain weight, and that won't last forever.
Well, I thought that too.
It won't. And so I'm gonna like, you know what? I might as well deal with this now. Like I love pasta. I could eat pasta 3 times a day. My favorite place to move would be Italy. Like I would just be happy with gelato and pasta. But my boyfriend has gained weight during COVID because all I do is feed him pasta. Like but yeah, I mean, I have seen such tremendous, amazing things that have happened during COVID. And that's all about finding that silver lining, right?
Yep.
COVID is such a big negative on so many people's, on checklists, right? Mm-hmm. But if there is a way to make it a positive, and I think that we'll realize that there are a lot of positive things that come out of COVID. Families coming together, working out, getting in the right shape, finding, who you are in the world, having a break from, the 9 to 5, the commute, everything like that. I think it will be something that we look back and think, this was horrible, but there's a lot of good that came out of it too.
I think is nothing but positive at all. I understand people's lives have been torn to pieces. I get that. But net, I think it's been nothing but positive. I work out with my son every morning. It's been so much fun. I think people have really had the opportunity to take a step back and look at their life from a different lens, their health, and understand how important all this shit that we do is just tearing us up and tearing us apart. So many things really, I think, positive come on as we've been able to, reevaluate our businesses, reevaluate what's important, reevaluate how we do things and how we do business and how we treat each other and how we treat our planet. I think there's been so much positivity from all this.
Yeah, I do too. I'm seeing positive vibes in the world. I feel positive vibes with people too. And plus I've been able to connect with people that I normally would have never had the chance to meet because we now have the ability to be online and actually talk and communicate.
Right.
So, but it's also been a time where I've lost touch with, some folks, and that has been, kind of sad. I think that there's a realization too, where, people don't stay in contact with you. If they do kind of disappear, were they really a good person in your life, right, as well?
I think that's a good thing. They don't talk to you no more. I mean, good, you've learned that now. Maybe not the way you wanted to learn it, but that's all right.
You learn it. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. And I've been learning them, some the hard way, some in a very positive way. And all those lessons, will make me into the person that I am and who I can become.
And I think sharing those are the power too. We can pick up something from somebody else and we can learn from somebody else's mistakes or failures or successes or whatever it is. I think that's really where a lot of the power lies there.
Oh, I think so too.
Is there any book or books or something that really is either, changed your life or really helped you on your journey? I know you've got a twisty, turny journey of all kind of things. There's something we can maybe point people to that really stand out to you?
So I don't love motivational books because they're just weird, right? Sometimes they're weird. And sometimes I see this person on the cover and she's with her arms, you can do it, you can go it, right? But the book that has changed my life has actually been the book that allows me to see the world in a different lens. And that book is the 48 Laws of Power by Robert.
Oh, love it.
So, I mean, I know that sometimes people say it's like a self-help motivational book, but I think it's a book looking at history and actually being able to determine, like how the world is run, right?
Mm-hmm.
48 Laws of Power and, The Art of War and things like that. Those have been some of the most influential books to me because the motivational, like, you can do it, just wake up and eat an egg and, I'm like, great, I kind of know that, right? Like, what I want to learn is how does the world work and how can I live in the way the world is working and actually create ideas, that will help me get further in life.
Did you read Robert Greene's new book, The Laws of Human Nature?
I've listened to it on tape, on audio.
Okay.
It's so good. I love Robert Greene.
Yeah, everything he does is great.
It's just so great. Did you know, here's a fun fact. Did you know that Robert Greene was a advisor at the company American Apparel?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So Dov Charney, who is, the former CEO of American Apparel, who was crazy in everything that he did in a very good way, right? I think Dov Charney, although, so at the very beginning of our conversation, we talked about people creating big ideas and sometimes the execution being bad.
Yeah.
Dov Charney is the perfect example of that.
Yes.
Dov Charney created an amazing brand. Mm-hmm. It is amazing what he did.
Yeah.
But as a human being, he's just not a good human being, right?
No, yeah.
At all. Right?
That was the downfall of the whole company and everything. Yeah.
It was a downfall of the whole company. And so, I think that you can give appreciation to what he built in American Apparel. And American Apparel was, by the way, using models that weren't traditional models before it was cool to do that.
Yeah.
It was not cool to have models that were not size 0. Mm-hmm. And American Apparel started doing that, and models that didn't look like traditional models or came from different ethnicities, right? So you do have to give credit where credit is due to American Apparel, but obviously Dov Charney is kind of crazy. But Dov Charney, there's an amazing podcast on Dov Charney. It's a startup podcast. If you look up Dov Charney, you'll find it. It's like 6 or 8 parts, pretty long. And it goes in where he was fascinated with the book, The Laws of Attraction book by Robert Greene.
Okay.
And, because he really wanted to win women over, right? That was his whole shtick.
Yeah, right.
That because of the book Laws of Attraction, he hired on Robert Greene as an advisor to the company. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a super fascinating, weird thing. But yeah, we're basically in the same camp of, Robert Greene loving folks as Dov Charney, apparently.
Yeah, well, I know of that story because of Ryan Holiday, which also came out of American Apparel. He was the marketing. So he also worked for Robert Greene as well.
Yes.
So that's very interesting how this all kind of just turns back into itself. That's interesting.
Ryan Holiday, I love him.
Yeah, I do.
I love Ryan Holiday. Have you read the Media Manipulator book that he wrote? Right, yeah.
Trust Me, I'm Lying?
Yes.
Yes. I've read every book he has. I've got his books on my desk sitting here.
So amazingly, I talked to somebody the other day who said that they know Ryan Holiday and were willing to introduce me to him. Wow. But apparently, because he's going down his philosophical, Socrates route. So I was like, I don't know if he's really going to do anything relating to marketing right now, but I love him. him. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, I've chatted with him a few times. I'm part of some of his philosophical Stoic groups, so I've chatted with him a few times. He's a really great person.
He is good. I want him to be a good person because I love him. I think. Yeah,
I think he is.
Yeah.
I've had some interaction with him. I'm into some of his inner circle type things. So yeah, some great stuff. I got posters around here from him, and he's got these coins and stuff he does with his Stoic stuff. I've got a bunch of stuff. I just I love everything he's doing. He's great. His books are.
How did this happen? A Ryan Holiday, Robert Greene fan. That's pretty. I'm sure when you asked me for my favorite book, that was not the answer you were.
Oh, I was just wondering. You never know what pops up when you ask these people things, and I think these are things that help people go down these journeys, I mean, things that helped you. And I think somebody can relate to your story and say, well, these are things that helped her along the way. And we start to, we get into these truths, there's truths in these things. And that's the thing that I like. A lot of these writings, 40 Laws of Power, Art of War, these are thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And if you read these things, I mean, that's the thing I've been really fascinated with over the past few years is reading these really, thousands and thousands of year old books and accounts of things. And if you didn't know the dates and places, it sounds like now.
Yeah.
And really, so it's disheartening a little bit in my mind. It's like, why haven't we learned these lessons? These things have been said all these years. Somebody's already talked about this. Why are we still going through this? And that there's so much wisdom there. And I think, I think it's great to share this and really give people another perspective and really open up, what's happening and what we can really learn and what we can be a part of. Yeah,
I mean, I think we're on to something, right? I
hope so.
I hope so. And those books have helped me so much. I mean, I often make fun of my boyfriend who, he reads history all the time, right? Like on my desk, which, we have tons of books like 1776 and RFK and like basically every history book, like about every, autobiography we have in our house.
Yeah.
And it's because, it's so important to learn from the past in order to make, realistically move forward in the future. And that's, I think why 48 Laws of Power is so great is because it mixes old and new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're reading through autobiographies, you might be like, why am I reading this? Like, what's the purpose of this?
Mm-hmm.
But being able to realize that the way that people thought about the world is constantly changing and being able to take how they thought and the good things and the bad things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to move those forward in life. And, I want to believe that for a lot of the world, in which we lived in, both past and present, we want the world to be a better place. And we're sometimes we want the world to be a better place in a very weird way of that, and I think that if we constantly move forward in, this collective understanding that we're all put on this planet and we have to make it sustainable and this has to work, then we can really move forward and create something beautiful.
No, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Where can people find you? What's the best way to kind of get in touch with what we got going on? Where do you want to point people?
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn, and please follow me on LinkedIn. Please follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, and then also my website, madisoncampbell.com, which is easy to remember. But Leda is, my baby, and I want to help anybody who's listening here, whether it is, sexual assault or a different type of trauma. I have so many resources, that I can give to any person who, wants that help. Our email is info@leda.co.
Okay.
And, feel free to email and we'll email back immediately with any resources that we have. We just want to help, whether, it's finding a lawyer or finding a support group or even just talking to somebody who has been through it and will understand. We are here for you.
Perfect. I will link everything for everybody in the show notes. Just head over to Social Chameleon Show and everything, all her links for everything she's talking about there will all be in the show notes. And one last thing here to kind of end on, I like to do a weekly challenge, either something we talked about or something else completely up to you. I want you to be the one to issue this week's challenge for everybody.
Yeah. So I think my challenge for this week is creating a list of good and bad, right? Like we talked about.
Okay.
So I want you to create a list, and on one side, I want you to say good, and on the other side, I want you to say bad. And on Friday, next Friday, I want you to look at that list, and I want you to see the distribution of good and bad. And I want to do what you said, which is also count the good things in your life that you might have not thought about. The microwave being able to turn on and microwave my food so it's warm in the morning, or the nice hot coffee, that I have, or the walk that I'm going on with my son, right? All those things are good. I want you to go and build that list and tell me what's on it, right? And if there is a lot of bad on it, realize that it's okay. And the next week you can switch that. You have the power to switch the narrative. It does not have to be bad forever. you can bring those tallies up and you can make sure that your next week and, every week following is filled with more good things than bad things.
Absolutely wonderful challenge. We always have the opportunity to change our story at any moment we want to. That's absolutely amazing. Is there anything you want to let the people know or chat about we haven't had a chance to go over yet?
I think my last final remark is, to those folks out there who have experienced trauma, realize that we believe you and it's not your fault, right? Sometimes you need to hear it from a random person you've never spoken to, but we believe you and it's not your fault. And like I said, it does not have to define your narrative. You define your narrative. You define the good. You define the bad. And so that's what I want to leave people with.
Absolutely beautiful, Madison. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all your wisdom, and thank you for everything you're doing in the battles you're fighting on the front line of sexual assault.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Madison, again for that. And like I said in the beginning of this, and we said throughout the thing, please, if you are a victim or know somebody of a victim of sexual assault, please understand it's not your fault. And please reach out to these resources for help. And if you know somebody that this could help, please absolutely share it with them. The best way to support the show is to share the show, share with your friends and families. If you like what we got going on here, we would love to hear from you. Leave a like, leave a review. Absolutely amazing. And if you want to connect with us all week long, you can check us out on Social Chameleon Show, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube if you're enjoying the video version, or in your favorite podcast app. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're not missing out on any new episodes. For past episodes and links to everything we talked about here today, please visit socialchameleon.show. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep transforming into the person you want to become.